Okay, so thanks, Zeta, for the introduction. I'm very happy to be in this panel discussion today, from box ticking to belonging. You know that at GORM we work a lot in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but sometimes when we talk about these themes, it seems kind of like a KPI to reach, a percentage to improve. But I want you to think that sometimes, why don't we stop measuring diversity and we start feeling inclusion and we start fostering belonging? And for that, I'm going to be joined today by three amazing storytellers that just don't represent in front of and behind the camera, but they reclaim, they challenge, they rebuild, they unsettle the narratives from inside out. So I'm very happy to welcome to the stage Anna Savchenko. Anna is a documentary film director and editor, originally from Belarus and currently based in between Spain and Brussels, and is our first international speaker at the GORM Gathering, so give a round of applause. Proudly supported by Creative Europe Desk, so thank you guys for having the opportunity of bringing Anna to Ireland for the first time. It's her first time in Dublin as well. She has directed and edited several documentaries and projects which have been premiered and showcased at international festivals and awarded several awards internationally. Her current feature documentary, which is in post-production, was presented at Cannes Doc Markets, and although still in post-production, she has received several awards like the 5th Geneva Impact Day Award, the European Women's Audiovisual Network Talent Award, and Best Work in Process in Central and Eastern Europe. Take a seat, look. We already know who Marcello Fidelis is, so please come to the stage again. Marcello, as he already presented himself, is originally from João Pessoa, Brazil, and the Close-Up Summer Residency 2025 winner, and we just saw how talented he is already. He's currently an MA student in film and creative media with extensive theater experience, and he focuses on immigrant experience in new environments. He filmed Cafuné and The Painting explore themes of resilience and adaptation, while his project Go Home explores displacement, belonging, and accountability. Thanks a lot for joining us, Marcello.
Thank you for having me.
And last but not least, Derek Ugochukwu, please come to the stage. Derek, named one of the Ireland's Rising Stars, is a writer and director based in Dublin. His directorial debut, You Are Not Home, we are mentioning home quite a lot today, garnered an IFTA nomination and screened at several Oscar and BAFTA qualifying festivals, including Sitges and SXSW. Drawing from his diaspora experience, Derek's work explores themes of identity and belonging through horror, thriller, and gothic drama genres. Thanks a lot, Derek. So, let's start from, I'm sorry that I'm giving my back to some people. Let's start from the word that is in the title of this panel, that is disrupting. Sometimes when we talk about D&I, as I said before, it seems like it's something that we can fix with, sunshines and rainbows and a beautiful policy. But what happens when we realize that the actual policies and systems that we are trying to fix are actually built in those systems based on inequalities? So for artists like you guys, disruption is deeply personal. It's creative, it's emotional, it's political, as we have seen just now with the shorts. And I think, or I ask myself, whose stories are being told and who still has to wait to ask for permission to tell their story and their truth? So Anna, starting with you, you said that your work disrupts the status quo by amplifying voices from underrepresented territories, like Belarus, that you're originally from. How do you know when your work as a documentary filmmaker is actually truly disrupting something, not just describing it? What tells you that your film is unsettling the right assumptions?
Thank you, Bea, for your question. Great question. And hi, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here and to share space with you guys. I'm very excited to be for the first time in Dublin and talking to this amazing audience. So I am from Belarus originally, and this is a bit in the core of my work and the disruption that you're mentioning, making invisible visible. Belarus is a country that is hardly known by most of the people I've met since I'm living abroad for around 20 years now. Whoever I meet, people usually say like, oh, you're the first person from Belarus I've met, or I know nothing about it, how come, or is it Russia, etc. So somehow when I became a documentary filmmaker, I felt that a bit of my mission is to try to make the invisible visible, so to tell the stories from my country. And I believe the way to do it is through small human stories. So it's not about big political narratives that I want to preach about, but actually I like to come close to people and through human stories to tell the story of a bigger country. And if speaking about disruption, I think it happens usually on 3 levels for a filmmaker like I am. First is disruption within me, because when I go and approach people that I want to work with as characters or the subjects that I want to work with in my documentaries, something inside of me has to change as well, because I always have my preconceptions, my artistic visions, initial ideas, etc. And when I come and meet people and research and learn more about things inside of me change. So the first level, let's say, of disruption for me in the filmmaker is inside of you, and it's a change that has to happen inside of you before you start your creative work. Then there is another level, is me going with the stories that I was privileged enough to be able to tell, going to institutions and funds and trying to convince those to fund my creative process and to tell these stories, right? And here, as a migrant filmmaker, I've been facing quite some challenges, because when you're not from the country where you are trying to ask for funds from, you always have to prove that you are like a legitimate voice and that the stories that you're trying to tell from this faraway country is a relevant story to tell. So you have to go and disrupt those institutions. So this is level 2. And the level 3, I would say, is like when the film, ready-made film, meets the audience. It's like what we just experienced with Marcello's film. And it's like when the ready film is disrupting, is changing something, is making a shift in the perception of people that watch it. And it doesn't have to be necessarily something big and fundamentally transformative. It can be like a small shift of perception. It can be a new feeling that somebody experiences. It could be a new space for empathy that wasn't there before. So I would say disruption has to work on these 3 levels for me, but I would be also curious to hear what Marcello and Derek think about it.
Yeah, go ahead. That was lovely. Thanks, Anna. I think it's very much linked because, Marcello, you said that your films and theater work bring authentic voices that are usually brushed under the rug. So following what Anna just said, what type of resistance have you faced when trying to portray these stories?
The biggest resistance I have found so far doing that was, it feels like, I don't want to point fingers because my mom told me that's rude, but part of the audience sometimes just kind of glaze over some things that are a bit obvious. At some point, I showed, on my last play, Americano, one of the biggest parts of the scene, it's about how the immigrant characters, because everyone is an immigrant at the play, are being treated while they work into the hospitality industry here in Dublin. But everything that some people focused on was the things that were happening on the surface level of the play. The whole thing was about how certain people here, while they work, are treated in not such a respectful way, in not such a caring way. It's a bit shitty. But sure, look, we all have bills to pay. And I think that while watching these kind of things and thinking, oh, but there's nothing here that mentions things happening in Ireland. There's nothing here that means, well, maybe it doesn't relate to you, but every other member of the Brazilian community that saw it, it meant something.
Yeah.
For every other member of other communities, it meant something. And I think that this association of not being able to see themselves on the characters is the hardest part to break, because it feels that, sure, I see you, but I don't relate to you. And is that really that nice? If you can't see that we all go through the same struggles, we all go through the same kind of situations, well, wasn't that supposed to be enough? But sure, look.
And connecting to that, and I think that the conversation is building up quite nicely. Derek, you use terror and horror and those genres to tell your stories that are also around identity and belonging, which I think is a fascinating way to, frame and portray social tension. So how those, why was your choice of focusing on those genres, and how those genres maybe help you say things that maybe realism can't?
Oh, okay. Thank you. I tend to write stories that are very much within the horror and thriller space because, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Because I find out that those genres allow me to sort of go underneath the skin of identity and belonging in a way that realism sometimes can't. Realism can show you a world and just describe it as is, but with genre, it helps you, you can feel through that, whether it's, the horror, the dread, the suspense, the fear, like you mentioned. Those emotions for me are things that open door to empathy. So when I use that, as a way to tell a story, it's almost like I'm using fear as a device, or let's say it's truth-telling tool to sort of shed out pretense. Because when people are afraid, the real come up to the surface, and then you're having to see what is true. So that helps me a lot. And then the horror for me uses that kind of emotional and visual language to kind of say the things that are not spoken, when you feel, the pressure of, unseen pressure of not belonging, or feeling like you're having to navigate spaces where you don't quite belong, or where every conversation feels like a potential minefield. So all of that are things that I can explore through genre in a way that I might not be able to do through just plain drama. Mm-hmm. Again, it's just me using fear to, or tension rather, to make people to be real, and rather than, it's almost like I'm using it to not just scare, but to reveal. If that makes sense.
No, thanks for that, Derek, which I think is very interesting, because the themes and the topics that the three of you work in your artist practice are very similar, but the approach could be very different. And I guess that gives you, let's say, more freedom and more restrictions in different ways, which leads me to the next point of the panel, that is authorship. So I guess that representation without ownership sometimes is just leading to the same power dynamics. And for me, authorship is just not being credited. It's also about power. And right now, because we're talking about narrative change and diverse stories, the power is about who actually tells the story and who actually has the power to define the truth and the realities that we are living, which I think there are things that the three of you have touched a little bit, and Marcello's before when talking about his short. So in that sense, Anna, you have a very special perspective, because you're both an editor and a director. So you have a little bit of power in not only defining the story, but also the rhythm of the story. So how do you navigate that responsibility, especially as a documentary filmmaker, because you are portraying social justice issues? Mm-hmm. So how do you handle that responsibility in terms of authorship?
Yeah, it's very, very complicated question, and in general issue in documentary, I think, because in documentary film we deal with real people, real stories, real dramas, tragedies, a lot of sensitive issues. And as filmmakers, we get a lot of power in our hands. What do we do with these stories? And it's interesting that you mentioned like the difference between editor and director in this. I can feel it in my work, because as an editor, you feel like you have a bit of distance and it's a director who is responsible, but then actually, as every language, film language is very political, and the way you make a cut, the two images you put together, how you choose to put them together, where you choose to cut the sentence of a person who is talking, all those are the choices that lead to certain consequences in a film, and then consequently for the person. So, and as a director, it's also like you have this real person whose life you will be exposing, and in the beginning it all seems like so great and important, and it's going to create impact, and people's minds are going to change, etc. But usually to make a film, it takes you around 5 years if it's a feature film, from the moment you write it down, like while you finance it, edit it, release it. And during these 5 years, a lot of things can change in the life of a person, or in a community where this person is from, or in a country where this community is from. And it's very, very important to be aware of what kind of effect your film is going to make on a life of a person, community, etc. I myself experienced something that we've been working on a film for 7 years, and it was about human rights activists from my country, and because my country is authoritarian dictatorship, and the situation has changed so drastically in the last years that we had to take a decision not to release the film, because the protagonist and the family of the protagonist are still living in the country. My family is still living in the country. So all these big ethical choices in documentary are like a huge subject, and it's very complicated. And there is no recipe. You cannot say, do like this or do like that, because there's never going to be a universal recipe. You have to go like very individually with every case. And I think it always has to start from the space of empathy and humanity. Like when you start making a film, from that space, you always have to check in with you and with your protagonists, with people you work with, how comfortable they are at every stage of the process, in pre-production, in production, when the film is about to be released, in order not to make any damage. And it's a complex subject, but there is hope, I think. You can always ask for help, like, I think it's important not to be alone in this process. You can always ask for legal advice. You can ask to work with risk assessment professionals, human rights consultants. In my case, because I work with human rights subjects and social justice subjects. So it's important not to stay alone and get like in this like vortex of very difficult decisions by yourself, but make it a group and collective decision-making process that hopefully will bring everybody to a safe place, and the films could be shared.
Well, thanks, Anna, for sharing all of this and being vulnerable with us, which brings me to Marcello. As a filmmaker in Ireland, but a migrant maker, a filmmaker in Ireland, how do you hold on authorship in an industry that sometimes wants to elevate the very voices but don't give full credit, artistic ownership to the creative behind the scenes?
I think, well, I feel that's a very loaded question, but at the same time, we all have different ways of saying things. We all have different ways of understanding a sentence that might have said to one of us, all different perspectives. And to be able to put something out there and to be able to just be like, here, I did this is mine, there's no influence from anyone else but me, I think that's a little bit unrealistic. It's an industry that's very, I like to think of it very collaborative. I think that it should be very collaborative. I believe that everyone that is telling me something, they tell from a good place of feedback, but at the same time, it enters on the topic of removing the authorship. And to be in an industry where there's so many voices looking at you and telling you so many different things, it's a big testament to trying to be centered and believe in who you are and what you want to try to bring with the project and the message that you want to put out there. I think it's a bit hard, if I'm honest.
Oh, please be honest.
It's a bit hard. And at the same time, I see a lot of people here that are trying to do the same things from similar spaces. And I see that there's a lot of little groups here and there trying to become these little communities around. And coming from academic background like I did and being able to read about the diversity and the inclusion of minorities and groups on the film industry back here on the early 2000s, and people saying like, oh, there's none, we need groups to start to do that, to create the spaces so people can feel more, feel like there's a space to be there and be able to create and just meet and develop. And I've been very, 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 very grateful in my life that I've got to meet some of these groups a long time ago. When I first got here in 2019, there was a big friend of mine, Ro, over there, who has a group called Gathering, that they brought me into the space at a time that I was a little bit, I just got here in Ireland. I have no relationships here, I have no friends, I have no job, I have no prospect of anything. And to be able to find a small community that was like, here, let's create something, let's develop something, and just be there for each other when there's nothing else, but just to exist and be like, hey, you're doing a good job. I think that's very important. And I know that I kind of took your question and did this.
No, please.
But that's
Really
just how my
bringing
mind
me
works.
to the next topic, so that's all good.
And going back to it, it's hard, but I think there's space to it, because we can't change anything if we remain doing the same thing that we once did before. And to be able to get all of that and just be like, here, I hear you, this is nice, I appreciate it, that's teach me a lot, but that's not how I do things. We all do things differently, and I'm pretty sure that anyone who just wants to express themselves and put their things out there, they'll always find their way of doing it, and I think that's it.
Oh, that's lovely. Thanks, Marcello. And Derek, based on your experience, what advice would you give to the new aspiring filmmakers about how to keep their authorship with all the barriers that Marcello and Anna have mentioned, and based on your experience?
Yeah. I mean, everything they've mentioned, I feel like creative control would be, it's not just the final cut, it's kind of like maintaining the why behind the project all through, which is what Marcello is saying, it's difficult to do that. So that's why it's important to collaborate with people that align with that reason, So I guess my advice would be to very much stay true to, just very much trust your perspective is valuable enough to say no to things that are not aligned. Because earlier on, I used to feel like every opportunity is progress, but it's not. Sometimes an offer could come in that is more like optics than authenticity. So it's just for you to know that if you say no to something, it's also a creative act, and it frees you up to things that align with who you are, so you're not sacrificing. Compromise, you hear that all the time, like, yeah, you gotta make compromises, which is true on a collaborative sense, but when you then see that you're having to chip away what makes you authentic and the why is being replaced by things that the specificity of your why is now replaced by things that is more of a commercial understanding, or to make things watered down for a particular audience to digest, that's when you start feeling like you're losing yourself. So, I mean, you can collaborate as wide as you want, but just trust yourself enough to stay true to your voice in the end, because that's, for me, that's what the creative control is really about.
Thank you a lot for that, Derek. Yeah, that actually deserves a round of applause. So just to wrap up the conversation, and I'm throwing this question at the three of you, and keep in mind that, you know, that disruption and that ownership that you guys have been mentioning in your different experiences, what belonging means to you in your creative space. And if you could say that in a few sentences before the rest of the team kills me for the time, and the floor is yours.
Okay, I'll say in a very quick sentence, belonging to me means you don't have to be accepted by everyone. I feel like you just need to recognize yourself in the most unfamiliar places. Yeah. Thank you.
It's very similar, different words. I think belonging it's about being, and to be able to exist in a space and don't feel like there's someone just eyeing you from the back or judging you or anything, just being and existing. Mm-hmm. I think that's belonging. And I think that answers the question. No?
Thank you.
Very quickly.
Anna?
So I think that belonging and not belonging go very much together, and we shouldn't be afraid of feeling not belonging, because actually it makes us understand what the belonging is. And I think it's really in between these two. And I think it's the space of constant reinvention. And this is what I love about feeling belonging, even if it comes from non-belonging. So I think
that was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, the three of you. I think that we have uncovered a little bit that disruption sometimes is not like a big thing. It's not loud. Sometimes it comes in small acts and it's quiet. And the three of you have shown different ways of disrupting. And we are disrupting right now by just having this conversation. So thanks, Derek, storyteller who transformed horror and thriller into languages of belonging. Marcello, obrigada, filmmaker who refuses to brush pain and truth under the rug. And Anna, a documentarian who turns the lens toward voices to the world that often edits out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't know whether we have space for maybe like a question or two. Any questions? We have two. Yes.
Number 6. Thank you. Never mind. Hello.
Hello. Oh, that was very loud. Sorry. So my question is for Derek, and it seems you have great integrity and you're able to stick to yourself, but I'm wondering, was there ever a time where you struggled with your self-assurance? And if you did, how did you overcome that?
Wow, thank you. Yes, there's been times where I've struggled with, my self-assurance, like I said. How I got back to it is, it might sound, this is just technically me. I always go back to my first draft as a writer. I always go back to my first draft. There's always something there that I would see that was the original concept or the original idea or the why that I must have, displaced or replaced or whatever it is, because maybe along the way, this was me earlier on. If I come to you as a producer and you give me one note, I'm going back, I'm writing that, I'm coming back. But now, I take a beat and I kind of like process to see, first of all, are you the right person? Do you get this project? Are you close enough to my idea? Otherwise, then it's a thank you very much, moving on. So for me, it's always going back and reading my first draft and just remembering what it is that is that why. Now I've made those decisions before that just ended up stalling the project, and the project is just there, and it's like, God, I don't know if this will ever be made. But now that I know better, I'm like, that would be what I would do again. That would be what I would do instead of what I was doing before, where I would just run off and go make draft and come back again. I would just, take a beat and go back to my first draft.
Thank you very much. There was another question
you.
here, and then we wrap up.
Thank you so much. Hi, my question is for Marcello. Hi, Marcello. I want to ask, what's your message for, like, many people, I suppose, in the audience here today, like, are in a place where they moved to Ireland recent enough, and as you were mentioning today, maybe they are working in hospitality or an industry where sometimes they face, like, a lot of difficult situations, and sometimes they feel disheartened when they have the feeling that they want to evolve in their career and then perhaps want to work in the arts or someone else, but sometimes they feel that all the doors seems to be closed for them. What would be your message for them, like for them to keep on going?
No pressure. Huh?
In 7 years of experience here, I've seen people that moved to this country and left in the first week.
Yeah.
I have seen people that had cried many, many nights and faced many difficulties to be here, to try to create a better life for them. I think that I can't give an answer for that. We are all different. We all have all different ways of living and healing. For some people, healing is going back home.
Yeah.
For some people, healing is making themselves a home here. So for anyone who's listening, know that the life that you want to live and the way you live it matters to no one else but you. Take that and keep going, wherever it takes you. I hope it's somewhere that you find yourself with joy and happy. Let no one try to take that from you. And I hope that answers that.
That is actually... I think that was the perfect closing for the panel, so thanks a lot, guys, and keep enjoying the event.